This is my Bystanders project from 2008. I was at Wits University as a lecturer. It was my first year there, and I saw Marlene Dumas do an artist talk speaking about her portraits that she was inspired to make from photographs in the newspaper, and I was thinking about how to deal with that as a photographer. And so that was the sort of initial prompt for me to start making the work. And then at the time, I was getting a lift into downtown Johannesburg with my father, and we started to talk about the missed encounter. In my third year at Rhodes University, Brent Meistra had set us these mind-blowing conceptual projects, photographic art making conceptual projects, and one of those projects was the missed encounter. When I got back to Johannesburg and was a young lecturer then, it really struck me how I had been 17 when the first democratic elections took place. I just missed voting, being able to vote. I was 17, so I was really into partying and just enjoying myself. So while I knew it was a really big deal what was happening in '94, the impact of it only really struck me when I came back as an academic in 2008. So I started to speak to my dad about experiences that the country went through that sort of went over my head because I was a child. And so he started to share significant days in our history. So this project was really a collaboration with my dad, and is one of the foregrounding projects in a later project that I made called Conversations with My Father. This is sort of where our conversation really started. My dad dropped me off at the at the Market Street Library in downtown Joburg, and I went into the archives and I started to pull out newspapers that were published on those significant days. So for example, let me see which one I can remember. I think this one was the day Thabo Mbeki resigned. And what I would do is, so actually I wasn't allowed to take photographs, just walk in and take photographs in the archive. So I started this process of kind of performative research, performance element, where I kind of made myself, it was totally just between myself. It was like a silly little game. I became like a spy, and I would go into the archive and I'd take out the newspaper and I'd look around and I'd find someone in the background and I'd extract information, and I wanted to be as inconspicuous as possible. And so I used a cell phone. Now I just want to reiterate that it was 2008, and the phones at that time, the phone camera technology at that time was, for lack of a better way of putting it, shockingly terrible. And I had this little Nokia 5200, which I started to take photographs with it. Despite the fact that the quality of this little camera phone was so terrible, the image size, the file size of the image was 52K. I know I'm speaking tech now, but so terrible. But then it had this amazing quality that I could get extremely close to a newspaper photograph, and I could pull out an image of about that size. So most of these photographs were tiny, tiny, tiny little faces captured right at the back of photographs. With an image of 52K, I mean, you'll see here as well, sorry, just to backtrack, that you can see the quality of film printing as well. But with a 52K image, I obviously couldn't print at this size or even at this size initially. So what I did was, and my background is in analog photography. Up to that point, 2008, digital technology, digital photographic technology was okay. We were absolutely not getting the same results as film cameras as we are now. Digital photographic technologies developed incrementally, but at that stage, and with my analog photography background, I knew to print the image to scale and then scan, enlarge, scan, enlarge, scan, enlarge. So that was the process that I took to get these images. Initially, the work was developed when I was invited onto an exhibition in Cape Town at the Muti Gallery with Antonia Steyn and Inga Prince, and the concept of that exhibition was called Unnatural History. And so when I had a better developed project and a deadline, or an outcome in mind, I gunned it, and I started to extract these faces from the newspaper and try and resolve how to print it. The work was originally printed onto Hannemule Etching paper, and what I loved about it, Tony Menkes printed it for me. He's a professional photographic printer, and what I loved about it was that the ink was very dark and almost charcoal-like, and then the paper, Hannemule Etching paper, is quite thick and textured, and then it had this total pixelation and breaking away, where it's quite confusing as to whether it's a drawing or a photograph or how the image forms itself. This work went on to the Joburg Art Fair in 2009, and at that stage then I was really lucky to be selected as one of the South African participants in the Goethe Institute and Simon and Jami initiated portfolio reviews on the African continent. That project was a 10-year project. I was so grateful to have been a participant for 5 years, and in that time that Bystanders work got put onto exhibition when we graduated from that project, and it toured the African continent to all the different Goethe Institute cultural centers, to the galleries. The exhibition was called Tem1. It opened at the Bamako Biennale in 2011, and my work, along with the work of 7 other participants, namely Sami Baloji, Abraham Agabasa, Michael Tsege, Sabelo Mlangeni, like amazing people who I was on the portfolio review with. The show toured. I then moved on with my career and later went to the School of Visual Arts in New York. And when I was there, I had an idea to resurrect this project. And it struck me years later to start experimenting with printing onto newsprint. And so I bought this pad of newsprint and ran this journal paper through the printers at the SVA, and just messed around with ideas around keeping the crop lines, the targets, and all of this information in, and keeping the title on the paper. You can see that this one is number 17, the day South Africa voluntarily dismantled its nuclear weapons program.
Could you tell us a little bit more about what inspired this piece?
Sure. I mean, like I said initially, it was... if you've seen Marlene Dumas' portraits, they are recognizable yet extremely abstract, and they fall apart and come together, and they are so evocative, and you want to spend a lot of time looking at how the images are put together, but how she manages to get them to fall apart. So I wanted to understand a little bit about how photography, this